Welcome back to the channel. My name's Brian Kingsbury. Today we're going to do another Brian Reads the News segment. This one coming to us from MSN.com. It's titled 18 Unexpectedly Valuable Collectibles You Might Have Lying Around. That stack of old magazines in your attic or those forgotten toys in your basement might be worth more than you think. The collectibles market has exploded in recent years, with nostalgic items from decades past fetching surprising sums at auction houses and online marketplaces. Many people unknowingly own valuable treasures that are simply gathering dust in storage. Here is a list of 18 unexpectedly valuable collectibles you might have tucked away in your home, waiting to be rediscovered and potentially sold for a tidy profit. At number 1 on the list are first edition books. A seemingly ordinary paperback could be worth thousands if it's a first edition of a popular title. First editions of classics like The Great Gatsby can fetch over $100,000. Even more recent bestsellers such as Harry Potter books with printing errors have sold for tens of thousands. Be sure to check the copyright page for first edition text or a number sequence that includes 1 to identify valuable copies. At number 2 on the list are vintage vinyl records. Original pressings of albums by iconic musicians command high prices from collectors. Limited production runs, misprints, or albums from the Beatles, Elvis Presley, and David Bowie are especially valuable. A mint-condition first pressing of the Beatles' White Album with a low serial number can sell for over $10,000. At number 3 on the list are comic books. Early issues featuring the first appearances of superheroes can be worth millions. Action Comics number 1 featuring Superman's debut sold for more than $3 million. Even the lesser-known character debuts from the 1970s to 1990s can fetch thousands. Condition is key. Comics in protective sleeves with little to no wear retain value best. At number 4 on the list are vintage video games. Original Nintendo, Atari, and Sega games in unopened packaging have skyrocketed in value. Sealed copies of Super Mario Bros. Have sold for over $100,000 at auction. Games like stadium events for the NES can sell for more than $20,000. Even well-preserved 1980s and 1990s titles with their original boxes can be worth hundreds. At number 5 on the list are action figures. Unopened action figures from franchises like Transformers, G.I. Joe, and Star Wars can fetch thousands. Vintage Star Wars figures from the 1970s in original packaging can reach $10,000. Even loose figures from the 1980s and 1990s with all accessories can command high prices from nostalgic collectors. At number 6 on the list are trading cards. Sports and collectible game cards can be incredibly valuable in good condition. A 1952 Mickey Mantle rookie card in mint condition sold for $12.6 million in 2022. Rare Pokemon cards like the first edition Charizard and Magic, the Gathering Black Lotus can be worth thousands or even millions. At number 7 on the list are vintage cameras. Old film cameras from brands like Leica, Hasselblad, and early Polaroid models attract photographers and collectors. A rare Leica O series from the 1920s sold for nearly $3 million. Even more common vintage cameras from the 1950s to 1970s can sell for hundreds if they are functional and include original cases. At number 8 on the list is antique furniture. A vintage chair or desk passed down through generations could be a valuable antique. Designers like Sharonin, Noguchi, and Ames created highly collectible mid-century modern pieces. Authentic 1950s Ames lounge chairs sell for $5,000 to $7,000, while older antiques with historical significance can be worth much more. At number 9 on the list are vintage advertising signs. Old metal signs advertising classic brands are now highly sought-after decor items. Porcelain signs from early 20th century gas stations, soda brands, and automobile companies can sell for thousands. The more colorful and well-preserved the sign, the higher the value for collectors of vintage Americana. At number 10 on the list are retro electronics. Original Apple computers, early Sony Walkmans, and vintage stereo equipment can be worth a fortune. A working Apple I computer from 1976 sold for over $900,000. Even more common devices like first-generation iPods can now fetch hundreds if they include original packaging and accessories. At number 11 on the list are designer handbags. Vintage handbags from luxury brands often appreciate in value. Limited edition Hermes Birkin bags can sell for 6 figures, while classic Chanel designs from the 1980s and 1990s frequently surpass their original retail prices. Handbags with original receipts, dust bags, and excellent condition are particularly valuable to collectors. At number 12 on the list are vintage watches. Luxury timepieces from Rolex, Patek Philippe, and Omega appreciate over time. A Rolex Daytona, once owned by Paul Newman, sold for $17.8 million. Even non-celebrity owned watches from the 1950s to 1970s can be worth tens of thousands, especially with original boxes, papers, and minimal wear. At number 13 on the list are antique toys. Cast iron banks, tin wind-up toys, and early board games can fetch significant sums. Original Monopoly sets from the 1930s sell for thousands. Rare mechanical banks from the late 19th century have sold for over $250,000 at auction. Toys tied to major cultural touchstones tend to be the more valuable. At number 14 on the list is vintage clothing. Designer pieces from influential fashion eras are highly collectible. Original 1960s Pookie dresses, early Levi's jeans from the Gold Rush era, and rare band t-shirts from the 1970s to 1980s can be worth thousands. Unworn items with original tags are the most valuable, but well-preserved vintage clothing can still command high prices. At number 15 on the list is sports memorabilia. Signed jerseys, game-used equipment, and championship merchandise appreciate in value. A Babe Ruth game-worn jersey sold for $5.6 million. Michael Jordan's rookie cards regularly sell for six figures. Items with authenticated signatures, photographic evidence, or direct provenance from the athlete fetch the highest prices. At number 16 on the list are first-generation tech products. Early iPods, first-generation iPhones, and classic gaming consoles are surprisingly valuable. A sealed first-generation iPhone from 2007 sold for over $190,000 in 2023. Collectors seek these items as symbols of technological history, with value increasing for unopened, mint-condition examples. At number 17 on the list are vintage posters. Original movie, concert, and travel posters from the early to mid-20th century can be worth thousands. A rare The Mummy 1932 poster sold for over $1.5 million. Even more common posters from the 1960s to 1970s for classic films can fetch hundreds or thousands, especially if they were stored flat and remain in pristine condition. At number 18 on the list are rare coins and currency. Old coins from inherited collections or pocket change might be worth far more than face value. A rare 1943 copper penny mistakenly minted during World War II can fetch over $200,000. Currency collectors also pay premiums for error bills, rare serial numbers, and printing mistakes, making some overlooked bills surprisingly valuable. There you have it, 18 items that may be hidden value in plain sight. These collectibles prove that nostalgia and history hold immense value in today's market. What appears to be ordinary clutter could be a forgotten treasure worth thousands. Before discarding old belongings, research their potential. Your attic might hold an unexpected windfall. There you have it, 18 unexpectedly valuable collectibles you might have lying around. Have you guys ever found anything lying around worth a significant amount of money? I want to know about it. Let me know in the comments section. Leave a comment with your most valuable find. I'd be interested to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this video, please take a second to hit that like button. You can do that now. And if you really enjoy this sort of content, consider subscribing to the channel.